Welcome to Speak Sex. I am your host, Eurydice. I'm your sex whisperer here on the internet universe. And today, in honor of Valentine's Day, we have a guest who will tell us about the origins of sex in the animal world that we all come from. So, Ron Magill is actually a celebrity here in Miami. He is the wildlife expert at the Miami Zoo. He's a zoologist by trade, but for the past 30 years, he's known for giving this lecture that we're going to hear today, part of it, a version of it, about sex in the animal world. I don't know why we call that kingdom. That's so, wrong.
I think because scientifically they group things in kingdoms. They're phylums and kingdoms, so it's the animal kingdom.
Yeah, but, okay. So,
queendom, does that make you happier? Queendom, the animal queendom?
I don't know why we give them the patriarchy, like impose it on them. And anyway, so Ron is also a wildlife spokesman and expert on TV, on like NBC.
Good Morning America, CNN, MSNBC. I'm a contributor for Wildlife Expert.
That's wonderful. And you've done a number of documentaries, right?
We have. We've been very successful with the documentaries, won 6 Emmy Awards. So
wow, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. And they've taken you around the world?
I've been very fortunate to travel around the world. I guess one of my favorite places to go is Africa. I've been there over 50 times. And it's never the same. That's the great thing about wildlife. You never know what to expect. You can't predict what wildlife is going to do. And the more you look at it, the more you learn.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. So the first lesson already that I've learned from you is like just liberate yourself from the idea of a predictable goal.
Absolutely.
Right?
I mean,
just do your best and don't try to control the outcome.
Don't try to control the outcome, and don't try to live up to someone else's expectations. And that's especially true with sex.
Right. I was just going to say, that's a great sex advice.
Well, when I came up with this presentation, when I introduce the crowd, I tell, listen, folks, the great thing about animals, and the reason why you can learn so much about them is because they don't have hang-ups about the size of things, the frequency of things, the duration of things. If it feels good, they do it. They don't watch Oprah. They don't watch talk shows, where you hear these so-called experts saying, well, you should do this many times, or it should feel like this, or you should do that. People need to understand everybody's different. And what animals do, if it feels good, they do it. They don't worry about these things. And that's what I tell people. When they come to see this presentation, they come to see things. And I tell them ahead of time. I'm also a Nikon ambassador, so I take photographs for Nikon. I'm a Nikon representative. So with my camera, I have photographed animals courting, breeding, in very explicit terms. So in my presentation, I don't use any profanity or anything like that, but it's very explicit, and I use it to the point. So I've got, when you come to my presentation, I've got a 10-foot screen, and the whole screen can be the size of a rhino penis and an elephant penis, and all kinds of things going on there.
It's beautiful,
and people are fascinated by it because. We kind of live in a hypocritical society.
Yes. That's what this podcast is all about.
There's a hypocrisy in people who pretend to think, I'll go to the zoo, and on any given day, everybody in the zoo is in front of one exhibit, and they're looking over each other's shoulders to see what's going on in the exhibit. I'll tell you what's going on in the exhibit. Animals are having sex.
Oh, yeah. Especially the monkeys.
Yeah. And
who are like so human-like.
Very
and you're
much
like,
so. Very much so. But, it's not just the monkeys. It's not just the primates. I think what I tell people is that when they look at what I'm going to show them on the screen, whether it be monkeys, whether it be dolphins, whether it be
dolphins.
Lions and tigers, they're going to see things that animals are doing on the screen that they have either done or they have thought about doing, but they thought it might have been weird or it might have been freaky. A classic example I give to them is flamingos. Flamingos are monogamous. They pair with one animal, but they will not have sex unless at least 30 other flamingos are watching.
They are exhibitionist monogamous.
Exactly. And
I
many
love
animals
that.
are. And zoos, what we've had to do for zoos that don't have...
Exhibitionist monogamy.
Absolutely. And what zoos have done, for instance, if you have a flock that's not 30 animals and you can't get them stimulated to breed, do you know what we do with them?
No.
We surround them with mirrors.
Wow.
And the mirrors work. They see themselves in the mirror, and it stimulates the breeding bee courtship. So, and I know some friends that like to use mirrors for a lot of things also.
Yeah.
So it tries to explain some of the things that we feel. I explain to people, when you have, anybody has a pet dog, goes out and walks your dog. That dog is urinating on every tree branch if you have a male dog because he's leaving his calling card. That's exactly what it is. Urine is the number one catalyst to sex in the animal kingdom. It carries the hormones, it carries the pheromones, everything's in there. If you have a female dog and she's going into heat, she starts spotting everywhere. She's leaving her calling card. We as humans, we have kind of dulled some of our original senses. We douse ourselves with colognes and perfumes and things, but there are pheromones that animals give off that we give off as human beings. I tell women this all the time. Listen, when I went to college, sorority girls, I was a sorority sweetheart up there, and the sorority girls would go into their room, okay?
I was a sorority
they had the sorority sweetheart thing, and the sorority girls would get their roommate in, and what would happen is the one roommate would have her period starting on the 1st of the month, and the other one had her period starting on the 15th of the month. Within 4 to 6 weeks, their periods were starting within 3 days of each other.
Definitely, for sure. Roommates, we menstruate at the same time.
Exactly, because your body gives off pheromones.
Ovulate at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then it's usually also in tandem with the moon.
Exactly. And people don't realize why
full
that is.
moon,
They think, oh my
most
God,
likely,
you're right.
Yeah.
So these are all things, but this all goes back to wildlife, to animals.
Yeah.
Animals synchronize their cycles also. And there's a reason for that in wildlife, because when animals synchronize their cycles, it's because they all cycle at the same time. They get bred at the same time. They all give birth at the same time. And that's synchronized so that they give birth in the season of plenty, when there's rains, there's a lot of grass to eat. But also, when all the animals are born at one time, what that does is it floods the food market. The predators that are there are going to eat the first few that are born, but then they're going to get full. It guarantees the survival of others.
That's beautiful.
So there's a reason for all of this.
Yeah.
There's a reason.
Yeah.
And that's what I try to show people. I say, if we keep an open mind and look at these things and understand, animals do a lot of different things. I start out...
Well, we have our own mating season, and we definitely have, women at least, a time of the month where we are extremely, sexual and aroused, in a like mentally distracting way.
Right.
But we dishonor that because we have, and I think this is like, how we have an original sin. I think this is our original sin, that we've separated ourselves from nature, which is like the fall from Eden, right? So, but it wasn't because we stole a fruit of knowledge. It was because, the patriarchy took over and came up with this idea and came up with a story. Well, no, it's not. I don't think the patriarchy is really like gender-based at all. It's just a system of controlling both genders, all genders, now that we have many genders. But what I'm trying to say is that, until those monotheistic religions, Judeo-Christian, Muslim, etc., that we all come out of, earlier religions, like the ancient Greeks, who otherwise came up with so much of what we consider like the birth of humanism and of Western civilization, blah, blah. They had gods, but their gods were anthropomorphic. They were like kind of eternal versions of themselves, and they got turned on, and they got, they had affairs, and they raped people, and they were jilted and lovers, and on. So even though like they didn't eat human food, they had like nectar and ambrosia, they still had sex in human ways with humans. So it didn't occur to them that that people to legislate sexuality through spirit, through the divine. It was only when, for whatever reason, we brought religion into like the sexual life, that everything got so confused. And now we have, and it's a way of controlling us, because our sexuality is our ultimate instinct, so it's the hardest aspect to control, right? So with this fear and shame, we have been, getting further and further away from this nature you're going to tell us about. And now, all we have is like words to try to get back to it. We have to talk about it to try to find our origin.
Absolutely. And I say that all the time, with animals, there's this misconception. For instance, there are some extremists that will tell you that animals only have sex to reproduce. Nonsense. Nonsense. Animals have sex because they enjoy it. Yes, it does lead to reproduction.
Right.
But if it was just to reproduce, you wouldn't have the rampant masturbation that you see in both sexes of animals across the board. There are animals, for instance, dolphins, that are so hypersexual. Homosexuality is found throughout the animal kingdom. This is another thing that, religious...
That's another thing. Oh, yeah.
Religious extremists would find you to believe that this is some human sin. Absolutely not.
Right.
It's found throughout
But they're
the
not
animal kingdom.
homosexual, they're bi. That's the difference. It's
but there's
another
both.
one. Like they can be...
Absolutely.
They can go with either, right?
It is a pleasure. Absolutely. Probably one of our closest relatives, the bonobo, the pygmy chimpanzee, is the least...
bonobo.
Yeah, you should look it up. You'd be interested in your field because it's the pygmy chimpanzee and it's the least violent primate society in the world. Why? They solve everything with sex. Everything is solved with sex. Once there is a dispute, there's sex. It's oral sex.
Wait. What?
This is the
so if two men, usually it's the males who dispute.
Right. And there are two males. One male will pleasure another male. One female will pleasure
That's
another female.
That's how the ancient Greeks did it.
Well, that's
Kinda.
exactly how the bonobos do it. Okay, so, and it's totally natural and has nothing to do with reproduction. It's all with making things good. Okay, bringing peace to the society again. Everything is solved with sex. Whereas, we talk about, males would bring, in the human race, we bring a woman jewelry or we take her to a fancy dinner. Well, a male or female will pleasure that female to make sure she's happy.
It's so much better
it is.
than monetizing it.
It is.
Just,
and animals do that. And these are so many societies of animals that you can see. So the bonobo is probably the most well-studied because it is the most sexual group of advanced vertebrates and it is the least violent. So what does that tell you? It comes from the 60s.
It comes
Make
from
love,
the 60s.
not war.
I know.
That is the definition of the bonobo society.
I know. And that was such a great time and it seemed to be going somewhere and then, it was deflated. I really think the worst thing, a lot happened, but I really think that, one of the worst parts of it, I think, was the advent of AIDS. Because, I don't know, you're the scientist, but it seems like it did come from our trying to have sex with all kinds of species that were not our own. Well, but, from sexual repression, not being able to find like sex abundantly in your community, something like that. But then everyone got afraid that, sex would kill you. So it was just the beginning of our having free sex and birth control, so that didn't have that, fear of like conceiving every time. And it lasted so little. And then immediately, that kind of like panic spread everywhere and you had to pick sides, the gay community, like kind of, you were gay or you weren't, the straight community pulled up. And,
it gave extremists
there was a lot of
false
backlash.
Ammunition. Okay, it became a fear tactic. It became a scare tactic for these extremists. And it's unfortunate because I tell people all the time, sex is the most natural process in our lives.
Yes.
It is also, especially at certain times in our lives, the single most powerful biological drive that we have. And there's nothing wrong with it. That's the thing that I have a big problem with is that you have people, like I said, you're embarrassed to be seen in an adult bookstore, yet, adult channels on the internet are the most highly viewed channels. So it just is a reflection on the hypocrisy of society that we try to be so puritanical to say, oh my God, you cannot talk about sex, you cannot talk about these things. And it inhibits people to the point they start having psychological problems over it, as opposed to understanding how beautiful and natural and fun. There's nothing wrong with saying sex is fun. And people don't get that. But if you watch animals, you would learn by watching them that, they're having fun. They're having fun. They're not hung up on all these predisposed things that they're supposed to be doing or expected to do. They do what feels good. They have great communication. Another misconception about animals is that you look at lions, for instance, that it's the lion. He's the king of the beasts, right? Anybody who's studied lions like I have will know that the lion's not the king of the beasts. When it comes to relationships, and it's very important people understand this, in most animals, when it comes to sex, the female is the one who makes the choice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She is the one who chooses the male. Rape has only been documented in two advanced vertebrates, human beings and orangutans.
Wow.
That's the only place that rape has been documented.
Wow.
Otherwise, it's always the female who instigates the connection. She is the one who chooses the mate. The male is the one that has to prove that he's worthy of her, which is why you have courtship. You know, the peacocks, for instance. You see the peacock male? He's always out there doing his thing, trying to get the female's attention, okay? Because it's his responsibility to prove to her that he is worthy of her. She can choose him or not. But it's always the male. The lion's the same way. He has to fight off other males to prove to the female, I'm worthy. If he tries to breed the female and she's not receptive, she will swat him and he will go away.
Yeah.
He doesn't force himself on her.
Yeah. Well, my pet theory, this is just me, but my pet theory of patriarchy is that it was created to exactly, like overturn that, that specific, way of choosing. It's a way to like protect, let's say, men from women's, procreative power, from the fact that they were the ones who could basically orgasm continuously with one mate after another. The man would ejaculate, fall asleep, and then she would, her screams would like bring some other, like erect and ready male who, if she chose him, she would, be able to like have another orgasm, and basically until she conceived again, like she wouldn't, have that exhaustion. Women get kind of like energized and fed,
absolutely,
by their orgasms, and they can, and also like ejaculating. The female ejaculate, which is so like demonized, and now it seems rare, and most women think, oh, I could never do that. It was actually, natural. So that was another example of like the equality of the sexes, which, has been shifted through social conditioning. So
it really has.
Kind of like accepting our animal nature, which is what I think you're talking about.
Because I believe we're all animals at heart. We have instincts. There are natural instincts that have evolved over millions of years. And these are things that have come up through the animal kingdom right up to human beings. And like I said, when people come to this presentation that I do, they see a lot of themselves in these animals. When people, for instance, they get into, there are certain cultures that would say, well, a male would never perform oral sex in a female. I know friends of mine that go, oh my God, I would never do that.
Many like macho cultures,
exactly. And it's so unbelievable to me because the reality is, like I said, urine is the number one catalyst to sex because urine is the carrier of all the pheromones, the hormones that are sexually attractive to a man. So when a man is doing that, that's arousing. It's mutually beneficial because if he does it right, it's also arousing for the female. But why do you think dogs are always smelling each other in the breath? Why are they always looking? They're getting that information. Okay, dogs don't have this.
Oh, it's intel gathering.
That's exactly what it is. It's intel gathering. That's what you're doing. You're getting information. Is she receptive? Is she cycling? Okay. There are animals, for instance, lions. When a lioness wants to be bred, she will go in front of the male, and I've got this all documented in photographs.
Oh, wow.
And she'll urinate right into his face. Like a little atomizer.
So
and
hot.
He gets that, and he does a behavior called phlegming, where he opens his lip and he does this, and he looks because he's kind of wine tasting. There's an organ in the roof of the mouth that analyzes.
He's wine tasting.
I call it wine tasting. I do. I call it wine tasting because he's analyzing the urine to see if the wine is ready to drink.
Wow.
Okay, to see if it's aged properly, and she knows when she's urinating into his face, she knows that she's ready. And as soon as he gets that, boom, then she sits down, she raises her tail, and he mounts her. But again, she's instigated this. If he tries to mount her without her instinct, she will let him have it. And in the animal kingdom, no does mean no.
Right. So what does she do when he tries?
Well, when she wants to be bred and she's urinating in his face.
No, fine. So she stays. She swells up. I know because I've seen my dog. The little vagina. Her little vagina gets all swollen, and she turns like you can see. She looks human. Her eyes have the same expression as like ours do when we are in sex space. When we're aroused.
See, the goal is
she gets like that Google eye thing, and then she kind of sticks her butt out. No one can miss, her swollen.
It's a signal.
And when she if she doesn't like the dog, she like yaps, and there is no way she turns into like a wild animal.
But also some animals.
And she's a Maltese for those who don't know who I'm talking about. A tiny Maltese.
Also play hard to get. Some animals do play that little cat and mouse game a little bit, and. You see it in human beings also. This is not going to be that easy for you. You need to work for it a little bit. But if the male all of a sudden gets put off and says, okay,
so what is that? Why do they do that?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, if you have a female dog and she starts spotting all over the place, the first male dog that comes to her, she's not going to let him breed her right away. The goal is because she wants as many male dogs to come as possible.
Right, exactly.
Okay, these dogs are going to fight with each other for the privilege to be with her. It's survival of the fittest.
Yes,
and then when she's done with that dog,
fittest.
she'll breed another dog. Her goal is to gather as many as she can have, so she makes the choice.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's something that's common in the
that
animal
makes
kingdom.
sense. Yeah.
It's common in the animal kingdom.
Yeah. Well, it's common. Yeah, it makes sense.
And then they have visual signs too. Well, our closest relatives are the chimpanzees. When a female chimpanzee cycles, her vulva, which is normally just small and pink, turns into a big red balloon. It looks like a tumor coming out of her rear.
Yeah.
And it's basically a big bullseye. The male sees that. It's a visual.
I was in India once, and I was hiking, and I had never, I saw it was a baboon or
Baboons? Sure. Rhesus monkeys.
and they were aroused.
Yeah.
And they were unrecognizable.
Oh yeah, that's
It
terrible.
was like those
People think they have a
Japanese
tumor.
pillows. They were huge, swollen. I think. It took me a couple of seconds to even begin to guess that these are genitals.
Right.
But I stopped. I had never seen anything like it. It was.
But again, it's nature's way.
Wild, and I will never forget it.
But it's nature's way to draw attention.
Yes,
That's
it was.
visual sign.
Oh no, it was unmistakable. I think it drew everything.
And
inside.
some animals are so sensitive to these changes in pheromones that they can pick up that scent from miles away. It's incredible how keen. We have dogs that can sense cancer in people because animals depend on their senses for survival. We have lost that. Again, we douse ourselves with colognes and perfumes and things like that. We have lost that, even though it still happens with us subconsciously. Like I said, with the pheromones with women, who synchronize their cycles. Animals do the same thing. So there's so much more that we can
I
learn from.
believe that it still happens. It's just you have to be open, because energetically we are the same we were thousands of years ago. You just gotta take off, layers of conditioning a little bit, forget what they told you in school, in church, some of the parents, let go of these little, phobias, which if you look at them logically really don't help in anything.
Right.
And then it's all there, I feel that there is a communication that happens, beyond words that's intact in all of us, and we haven't lost it. We just gotta get clear access to it again.
And we just have to be ourselves. We got to stop comparing. We tend to always want to do that, compare. And I start to talk by giving some statistics. And I say, I open the presentation by saying, gentlemen, this is going to be a very humbling evening for you. and I give them some stats. For instance, I tell a guy, I said, listen, if you're with your significant other 2, 3, 4 times in one night, that's a big night, right?
Oh, yeah.
For most guys, that's a huge night. For some guys,
Huge
it's a big
night.
year. Okay? But the bottom line is that if you compare yourself to the mammal that has the record for the frequency of intercourse, you're not even in the same zip code. It's a little animal called the Shaw's Jerd. It's a type of gerbil. It's a type of rodent. It breeds every 15 seconds for an hour.
Wow.
Every 15 seconds for an hour. But having said that, like I explained to the audience, I said, listen, before you all start saying, the women say, that's the kind of guy I need, that's the kind of endurance I need.
No way.
It's quality over quantity. For instance, and I do my little demonstrations on stage too. When a Shaw's Jerd breeds, I do the demonstration. He gets behind the female, he's done. Okay, he's done. And I look at the audience and I say, women, I know what a lot of you are saying. Welcome to my hell. Okay? But the bottom line is that's what the Shaw's Jerd does every 15 seconds. Now you look at something like a rhinoceros. A rhino male will breed the female. He'll have intercourse with the female. There's no pelvic thrusting in any of the pachyderms. Elephants, rhinos, hippos. The male just mounts the female, inserts the penis, and the vagina does all the rest of the work. It's like there's little elves in there working on that whole thing. Okay? So he will ejaculate every 2 to 4 minutes for an hour, mounted on top of the female. Every 2 to 4 minutes for an hour. So again, don't, as a human being, start comparing yourselves to other things because it's different. It's different.
Well, and every human is different.
Absolutely.
I think that one of the greatest fallacies is when people change partners, they think that what they were used with one partner, is what they should do with the next partner. And that's, you have to start all over and find out all kinds of new, ways and information and likes. And so, like everyone has their own, secret sexual
And you bring up
language.
a very important point, communication. You've got to be able to communicate with each other what you like, what you don't like. You have to be able to talk those things out. There's too many people that get into the bedroom, turn out the light, get on top, close their eyes, and they're done. And, especially as you get older, I think that's one of the things that is so important. You realize that sex is 90% in your brain. It really is. It's the way you think. It's the way you listen to things. It's the way you listen to your partner. These are the things that really give you the ability to keep enhancing that sex life. Even though as you get older, physically, you may not have the endurance, you will have the experience and the knowledge with your partner to make it as good or better than it ever was.
Yeah, for sure. But it is, for me, like more than even the brain, is kind of like, letting go, just letting go of all the stuff that. Yeah. So getting the old brain, out of the way, because from the day we're basically taught how to speak, we're also taught no. And so for so many years, until adolescence, our understanding of sex is no. Then that's how we train our young, which is the exact opposite of what we should be doing. We should be, saying, yes, this is why it's good. This is what works. Yeah. But, that fear of like the way that we, eroticize everything that has to do with like intimacy, nakedness, and then the way that we turn the erotic into, something shameful or, pornography,
right.
or something that is monetized, becomes the problem early on. Yeah. And that's what's beautiful about for the animals. I'm envious of them because they don't have time and money. Right. and we came up with those two ways of counting, in order to take power away from like the sexually successful and, give it to those who are, could like hoard more, right? And maybe count better, and then you end up with like a situation like the Weinstein trial right now, where a man like that was able to have, sex like thousands of times against the will of his mates, only because like he had accumulated those tropes. Right. Yeah. I mean, and that starts with with the idea that but when you give your body as a woman in exchange for something, instead of you give your body because you want to, because you're receiving pleasure, and then also males are able to receive pleasure, which in our process of confusing everything and kind of like owning the woman and passing her along, we've all, men have been robbed of that, the ability to kind of like express emotion, receive, be in stillness, be in sexual stillness.
But, I think also, unfortunately, society lives on a pendulum, and the pendulum has gone to one side now, where I feel sorry for almost this younger generation because it's become so cynical that, I think a young man is hesitant to look at a beautiful woman and say, gosh, you're beautiful. They're hesitant now because they think, oh, is she going to take it the wrong way? Is she going to think I'm looking for something else? My father raised me up and said, listen, son, if you see a woman who is, generally speaking, very unattractive, but she has beautiful eyes, when you see her, say, you have beautiful eyes, okay? My father would always look at a beautiful woman and say, you are stunning. Oh my gosh, you're beautiful. And that's how I grew up. I mean, I always wanted to, but today, I find myself not saying that to anybody anymore, because I'm always afraid that someone is going to say, what do you want? Don't dare talk to me like that. Don't sexualize me or anything like that. I'm more than just a pretty face. I said, I was just trying to tell you you were pretty. I'm sorry. I think society has gotten to such an extreme now that flirting is no longer flirting. Flirting has almost looked like some threatening type of thing. And I feel sorry because I think that takes a lot of fun out of the communication that couples can have.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I'll go with that. I just feel that, the correction has been necessary.
Oh, absolutely.
So we are in a good path, but yeah, we gotta, that's what what I call Speak Sex is about, finding, knowing, learning the right way to say these things without, kind of violating, space or sense of self or sense of dignity and all of that. But the answer is not to not say them.
Exactly.
The answer is not to just keep it in.
Exactly.
Just to find, to rephrase, to tweak the way we say them, so it doesn't sound like, the male is the dominant, in charge, the taker, because that's how we were conditioned. We were socially conditioned to assume the man's there to take the female from like her family, right? The prince is taking her, saving her. Yeah. So part of like feminism's, task, social conditioning task, was to allow women to come into a place that was similar to the place that men had in society. In the process, I think, right, what went a little off balance is that a lot of the women have had no choice but to become fake men, to act as if
let me ask you something.
They're not women.
Let me ask you something.
And that is something that has to be corrected somehow,
If I were taking you out to dinner, how would you feel if I opened the car door for you to sit in? How do you feel for me opening the car door for you to get in the car door?
Yeah, that's a good question.
How do you feel? Because, there are some women now that say, I can open my own car door. and when I'm not opening the car door because I don't think you can open the car door. I'm opening the car door because I'm trying to show you respect and show you that, I want you to feel like a lady should be treated. Not that you can't open your car door. And unfortunately, you have this extremism now, this correction that's overcorrected. It said, I can open my own car door.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say I can open my car door because obviously it goes without saying, like you can see I'm capable.
Right.
I can open a door. But I would like to be in some sort of like relationship or exchange where I am also opening doors.
Right.
That it's not like only one way. Like in my ideal world, and I would like to live long enough to see it, I would like men to wear makeup. I would like men to be able to wear a little dress because we're going to, be like, in front of the camera. I mean, not because they have to,
right.
But if they're moved to, if a man's moved to, like he can wear a little push-up bra and it doesn't mean anything about his identity or his sexuality or what he does, in the bedroom with like his partner. I think, all kinds of ways, that we separate genders should be, or eradicated and overcome. So not just like, okay, let's not do the cliche and that's all. No, kind of like bring us all, even like the gender, what is that called? The gender party or something, the gender reveal.
Party, yeah.
I mean, I think that's like the beginning of the trouble. Like why pick a different name according to gender? Why pick a different color according to gender? We like start separating us and putting us in these little, limited categories. And then we reach this point where everybody's defensive, The male is defensive because like, why is it not seen as a gesture of like respect and honoring that I'm opening the door? And woman is, upset because she's like, why does he think I'm so weak and incapable? Right.
I just think it's overly defensive.
Yeah.
An overly defensive motive.
Yeah. We like have like overthought and overcomplicated this entire, basic like, sexual wealth that we're born with, that you're telling us about. I have an example for you.
Go ahead.
I was, and then, I want to hear your stories, but I remember this as you were telling us about the monkeys, and I don't know what kind of monkey it was, not my field, but I was new in America. I left home when I was 15 and came to America on my own. So I left the little town of Heraklion, the capital of the island of Crete, and I came on my own to LA. And I stayed with this woman and went to high school there for like a semester. And so my first boyfriend, I went to his parents' house for Thanksgiving, that Thanksgiving. So I arrived like in August or September when I came. Thanksgiving, it was so soon after. And, I was raised in an extremely repressive, controlling, old world household, where everything I did or said, spoke to my father's honor, all of that stuff. So nothing was allowed. There was still like corporal punishment. And then I go to this other planet, where like kids took me to see Rocky Horror Picture Show. So I literally thought I had landed on another planet. Yeah, nothing was the same. And I go to this dinner, and I think they must have been, like, looking back, hippies or something. So there were a lot of animals in the house. I had never, in Greece, people don't have even dogs in the house. There is no such thing. They're outdoors. The animals don't come in.
Right.
So not only now it's November, end of November. I was, familiar with like dogs indoors and loved it. And I've, always had one ever since, or two. But I had never seen anything like this household. They had like a big open living room, very high skylight ceiling, like a cathedral ceiling. And there were birds, parrots, lovebirds, different, not just one type, flying around free and speaking every so often, And then the dog, as I came in, there was like a big dog. I don't remember now the breed, but it was a big dog. Who immediately came and smelled my crotch.
Mm-hmm. Normal?
Normal, yeah.
Very
he hadn't been trained not to, or she, but I was like horrified. I thought, what will his parents think? The shame, they think that I'm unclean, that there is an odor coming out. Yeah. So I was so mortified. Okay. The dog, like, it took him or her a while, left my crotch. We sat down at the table. They had a pet monkey.
Oh.
And I have never seen, it's beyond imagination for how I felt at that dinner. The monkey sat on a high chair, and then, we ate, they ate, and there was a conversation, and I was on I was trying to fit in so badly, and the monkey started playing with himself.
Yeah. Also not uncommon.
Oh my God. And like everything I had been taught in 15 years of my life on this planet was just, taken apart, destroyed and deconstructed, during that dinner.
Yeah.
I was like, no, none of these rules that I know exist.
Well, I will tell you that you can go to the zoo on any given day. And when I stand...
And they never said anything to the monkey.
Yeah. When I go to the zoo, I'll be at the zoo sometimes, and there'll be public in front of the chimpanzee exhibit. If a human woman is having her period and she's in front of the exhibit, the chimp knows. The chimp can smell, okay? And he will get all excited. And we have a place where you can walk right up to the glass to see the chimps and the gorillas. And if the woman comes up to the he will masturbate right in front of her, okay? And this is an ongoing thing because the animals are very sensitive to those senses, those changes in sense. It has nothing to do with the woman being dirty, being... It's all about pheromones. It's the pheromones that you have. And these are things that animals pick up. Like I said, a dog today can smell cancer in a person, okay? So animals, their first line of communication is through the genitals. It's dogs on males on males, females on females. The genitals reveal the availability of someone, the sexual state of someone.
Wow.
So that's why they instinctively do that. On the same note, when a male chimp gets in a fight with another male chimp, the first thing he tries to do is bite the testicles off of the male. Okay? Because they know that is the reproductive manner to pass those genes on, and he wants to eliminate that competition of having those genes. When you hear women or people that have been attacked by chimpanzees, that's what they do. They bite the genitals. It's an instinctive thing that they do because they understand that is the future generation, and they can eliminate that, and that eliminates the threat. So there's so many instincts that animals have. Going back on another subject, we were talking about the roles, the patriarchal roles. The smartest social groups of animals in the world are elephants. And elephants are matriarchal. the females run the entire herd. Males, once they become sexually mature, they go off on their own. They're solitary. They come in to breed, but then are chased out. And an elephant,
They're chased out.
They're chased out. Yeah, the males, they're only the young.
So the females
offspring.
raise the young then.
All the females. It's the mothers, the sisters, the aunts. It is one of the most incredible societies and the best parents. When you hear that term, it takes a village to raise a child, that is modeled after elephant society. Some of the smartest, most cohesive social groups are matriarchal. And I've always told people, and I'm not saying this to be patronizing, I consider women the stronger sex, in many ways the smarter sex, and they're certainly the most patient and reasonable sex. You don't want to paint with a broad brush because everybody has their own personalities. But generally speaking, look at elephant society. It is run by the females. And that should tell people a lot. And I tell guys all the time, listen, in my own relationship, I know that my wife may many times try to make it seem like I run the household, but I know that she runs the household. She runs the household. I go to work, I come home, I'm happy and lucky to be with her, but she runs the household. And I think the more men that understand that, the happier they're going to be.
Well, I think that one of the I don't like the word difference, but definitely one of the characteristics of female or womanhood or woman gender in any way is that sense of survival, that no matter what, I have to survive. I have to survive for my young that I have or will have, and I think it's much more pronounced that we will, take whatever it is because we must survive.
I agree wholeheartedly. I told you I've traveled to Africa many times. The backbone of the continent of Africa rests in its women. Anyone who goes there will see the women are the ones that are working. They'll be working in the fields with a baby on their back. They're doing it. And many times you go to the villages and the men are just circled in the village drinking and talking.
That's how my culture is.
I mean, it's amazing.
Like 100%.
It's
the
amazing
men are
to
at
me.
the coffee shops,
exactly.
drinking coffee,
The women are
playing
doing
backgammon, talking politics,
Yeah.
non-stop.
Listen, here at home, my wife, she is the definition of multitasking. When the kids were growing up, she ran her own practice. She's a physical therapist. She had running her own practice. She came home. She did the kids' homework. She did all the meetings. I was not capable of multitasking that way. Quite frankly, when I got home, I didn't want to go back to school again. I didn't want to have to do homework again, things like that. My wife did it with great pleasure. And I was just in awe of her ability to multitask that way and do all of those things. And I think that's why in many families, a father figure is incredibly important, but there's something about the mother in a family that is just, it's indescribable.
Yeah. And the kind of support women as well.
Absolutely.
Definitely. I agree.
Women.
I think that unfortunately, because motherhood is not paid, again, our society by now has got to this, I call it decay, this place of such excess when it comes to like time and money, shrinking time and worshiping money and judging everything by money, that because motherhood is free,
right,
and it's not paid, it's ignored. So, I was a single mom and I always felt, I had a big respected career before. Being a mother was the hardest thing I ever did, by far, no comparison.
And I think every mother will tell you that.
But also the most rewarding. So but it was the hardest work.
Right.
And yet, people would ask me, so what do you do? And I could never say, I'm her mother. Like, what do you think I do?
Right.
I had to kind of like go back and say, I'm a writer, I'm another. I have like copying the man, trying to sound like a male, when really, I was happy to have taken, put that secondary to mothering. Yeah. So I think that's the problem. It's the social value and really the monetary value we assign to it.
I think things now with the advances we have, whether it be the internet and social media, that is compounding the problem, because I call it the Kardashianizing of America. That we look like the Kardashian family with millions of followers, and I ask people, what are you following? What is it that the Kardashians have done that warrants this incredible? it's a big hype. It's like the emperor's new clothes to me. I'm saying you have these people that are great at marketing themselves, but what are they really contributing to society? And quite frankly, I don't see much. And that worries me because there's so many good people, so many good moms, like you say, doing this incredible work that is raising a family. You know, today to get a child to the age of 18 and get them through school, it's the hardest job in the world. It is. It's the hardest job in the world.
Yeah. And also, power to all the nannies and the babysitters, and that's all beautiful. But like for me, in my case, I thought, I have not studied life as much and thought about life as much as I have and written about it and kind of consider myself, meditated as much as I have, in order to hire a stranger whom I don't know to be with my child most of her time, most of her growing up life, so I could make money to pay the stranger. I mean, there was no logic, that I would choose the career over mothering, but the society wanted me to. It really, really was rewarding me if I did that, and financially punishing me if I didn't. So that's where the beginning of this propaganda happens, because we discredit mothering and assume that just because women do it, it's something that anyone can do.
and that's another thing you learn from the animals when you watch how animals raise their youngs. Their young. People say they use the term anthropomorphic in giving emotions to animals. And I think that's really kind of self-centered. I think it's very self-centered for us to think that we are the only ones that can feel love, that we are the only ones that can feel sadness, that we can feel happiness. I believe animals feel all those emotions.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I feel that by taking that away from them, we're taking away the core of what they are in many ways. And when I watch an animal, a family, for instance, elephants again, how they raise a family, how it takes a lot of work. It takes that village to raise the family. That there's a lot we can learn. A mother, whether it be a gorilla, whether it be a lion, whether it be a koala, will protect their baby often with their lives. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
With their lives, they'll do that. So we are very selfish to think that, well, animals don't love. They do. They do love. And I've seen that with their offspring many times.
Yeah. Okay, so, and they don't have rules and regulations, right?
Exactly.
So
they don't follow
they
a
don't
chart.
think about, they don't think okay, this is the age when you can lose your virginity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I said, animals, if it feels good, they do it. They learn through the process. It's a learned behavior that is passed down from generation to generation, with the final aspect being just to survive. Just to survive, pass on your genes to the next generation. And really enjoy life. That's what they do. They enjoy life. We get so hung up in so many things and so many, benchmarks that we think we have to meet that we forget how to have fun and live our lives to the fullest.
Yeah. And also, I mean, I don't know how the different animals select, their mate, but from what you just said, they kind of do it on the basis of, smell and intuition, right?
Much olfaction, it's sight, it's smell, it's taste. Oral sex is common throughout the animal kingdom. So all these things are all important factors that add up to making that choice. But at the end of the day...
So they may have oral sex and decide they don't want to go into penetrative sex.
They may.
Wow.
They may. I've seen that happen.
Wow. What animals is that?
With an orangutan. Yeah. So I've seen that happen. So again, it's all a choice. It's going step by step. When I was a kid, when I was in high school, you go out on a date, and we always use the analogy of a baseball game. You go to first base first, and you hopefully get to second base and then to third base. But if you went from first base to third base without stopping at second base, the girl would hit you and go, you're such an animal. What kind of barn were you raised in? And and that's a misconception. My point is, if you courted your partner as well as animals court their partners, you would have a much more successful romantic life because animals go through a series of steps. It's not a wham bam thank you ma'am thing that many people think it is. There's a whole series, many of them incredibly subtle. We don't pick them up. But if you study animals long enough, little tiny motions in the head, little looks in the eye, little wiggle of the tail, the way the hair stands up, these are all visual signals, visual steps that lead up to final breeding. But that's not something that happens right away. It's a matter of communicating. Animals communicate differently than you and I do. For instance, gorillas.
Well, they don't have language.
Well, but they do have language.
To their advantage,
They don't
I
have the
think.
language that we
Exactly,
have.
they don't have
But
this,
they do have a language.
Yeah.
And the language is in their body motion, their body movement, with the sense that they leave behind, the way they look at each other. A gorilla, if I'm a gorilla and I'm looking at you and you're a gorilla and I look at you in the eye like this, that's a threat. That's a threat. And if you smile as a gorilla or a chimpanzee or most other primates, that's a threat. So we immediately interpret that as, oh, look, he's smiling, he's happy. No, that's anxiety. That's not the way it is. So people need to understand they all have their language, but it's not the same as our language. And once we take the time to observe and learn, that's what's going to teach us, And I always try to keep an open mind and have patience. Patience is so important.
Yeah.
It's so important. People expect immediate, gratitude right away.
Gratification. It's like have patience.
Have patience. Work up to something to where if and when you get there, it's worth it.
Yeah.
It's so much more rewarding.
Yeah. And, I think that now with dating apps and Tinder and, whatever, I mean, on one hand, it has made people less repressed, which is good. But, on the other hand, that whole kind of seduction process that is not about, visual and maybe a few, words that you use to kind of sell yourself, the PR you make for yourself, all the other cues are gone. Yeah. So, and then we get to a place where women feel that they have to, I don't know, enhance their bodies, surgically and, kind of look for help in places that are not within, because it seems that we have become superficial, but we are not, because we still have our nature. We have all this extra information. We're having it right now. We just don't take a moment, the patience. The time. The moment of quiet. Without the whatever you call them Kardashians on the screen, without the screen, to kind of check in and listen and understand what we're feeling. Yeah,
I agree.
And go with it. Yeah.
I agree. And again, I've been very fortunate. Since I was a little boy, I just been with animals, worked around animals, and I base a lot of my behaviors around what I see with animals. I do. I actually do. And I think it's, I'm married for 31 years. We have a wonderful life together. We have great open communication. And those are all things that I learned just from watching nature. Nature is universal. Like I said, whether it be the lions and the tigers or whether it be us as human beings, there is a commonality there that we just have to take the time to look at, and you'll see how you can put it together.
Yeah. So I have a question. Well, I have a couple of questions, but one that comes to mind is I lived here on the beach, where I still do, and there was a huge group of manatees that swam all the way. Well, they came all the way to the shore. So that went on. Yeah, I saw it the first day, and I didn't know. We think, they're going to be beached, or maybe it's bad for them. So day two, I called, I don't know who, the Coast Guard or someone, and they called,
Fish and Wildlife.
Right. And word of mouth was that it was the males. It was mating season.
It's an orgy.
And the males, and were kind of pushing the females to a place where they all had to mate.
Yes.
In really shallow water. So that's,
Yes. Manatee orgies are very common. Once the female releases her pheromones, it's like a dog in heat. The male manatees pick up that scent, and that's her goal. Get as many in as she can. Okay. And then they'll herd around her. And again, it's trying to make sure you have the highest success rate of reproducing. The more males, the better for the female to become successfully impregnated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And okay, another question. Is it true that when dogs are actually in intercourse, they cannot be separated?
Yes. Well, what happens is the penis of a dog, once it's inserted into the vagina, the head blows up like a balloon. So it's locked in there. There's no way the penis can be withdrawn until that erection subsides and that balloon becomes small enough to come out. Literally, it's locked in there. So people who do things like I throw hot water or cold water on the dog, that's an absolutely cruel thing to do. That is something that is normal, and it's the female's way of locking the penis in there so all the semen gets in to help ensure that she's impregnated.
Yeah.
But when a dog first breeds, people look at the penis of a dog and they think it looks like just a little pink sausage. Well, once it's inserted into the female, the head swells up like a ball and locks it in. And he cannot pull out until that erection subsides.
Yeah, I've been in traffic, not in America, but it's like in traffic that all the cars on both sides have stopped because we're waiting for these two dogs to be done. That's in the old countries where the dogs,
but that's the way dogs reproduce.
Yeah,
that's the way they reproduce. And a lot of times, the erection won't go down, and the dog will actually get off the female's back, and they're facing opposite directions, and they're hooked up on the back like that. But it's not by his choices. That's not going to happen until that erection subsides. That's the only way they can unlock.
So what's the Valentine's Day message from the animal part of us, from our animal brothers and sisters?
The Valentine's Day message is that what happens between you and your partner is between you and your partner. Do not look at what other people think, what other people say. Keep an open mind. If it feels good to both of you, do it. Don't get hung up about things that you think you're supposed to do. Don't get hung up about how big something is, how frequently something happens, the number of times something happens. What's happy for two people can be totally different for two other people, or three other people, or four other people, whatever your game is, okay? Do not worry about people who are not in your relationship think. It's the people that are in your relationship that are important. That's the most important thing. Be yourself. Explore. Keep an open mind. Sex is the most natural process on the face of the earth. Short of being born and dying, it's sex. And people need to understand that. And the more you take away those misconceptions, those stereotypes, those stigmas, the more you're going to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And instead of porn, watch some animal sex documentaries, maybe?
Sure. You can watch all kinds of stuff. I mean, everybody has a different game. Everybody has a different game.
Learn something different.
Learn something different. Valentine's Day, come out to the zoo and see me do this talk. You'll learn things that you never thought you would want to learn. I'll be very happy to do this.
When are you doing the talk?
I'm doing it on
Friday?
At Zoo Miami on Friday. Yes.
What time?
7 o'clock.
Okay.
7 p.m.
That's great.
They can go to zoomiami.org. You can get tickets there. And I think you'll learn a lot. It's an adults-only thing. It includes wine and cheese. And I hope people drink a lot of wine before I start talking because they tend to like it a lot more.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for coming.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you for
It's a pleasure
all
meeting
this
you.
wisdom. It's beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
hope we'll do it again next year.
Look forward to it.
And thank you, everyone, for listening and trusting us. And until next Friday, speak sex.